With this new film and the return of Neo and Trinity, this seems to confirm one of the most shocking theories of this saga, that the supposed real world depicted in this franchise, the world in which our heroes wake up to, is just another layer within the Matrix. That the prophecy of the Chosen One is nothing more than a great fabrication of the architect, designed to give false hope to the humans so that they can never wake up.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
The story of the Matrix shows us 4 versions of reality. The first is the Matrix, the program where everyone is connected. This reality is the one where much of the movie takes place, one that is monitored by the agents and hacked by Morpheus and his companions. This reality can be manipulated by anyone. Even the Chosen One develops certain skills that enables him to see the code and hack it in real time, modifying the code and adapting it for himself. It was for this reason that Neo saw the Matrix just before acquiring his powers. Remember this, because it will be very important for this theory. The second version of reality is the one that Morpheus shows Neo, an imitation of the Matrix that they created for training purposes. This version of reality is much more limited, but serves its purpose as a training ground. This simulation can be molded by a user. The third is the supposed real world, a place where machines have enslaved humanity, where those who manages to wake up and be rescued by the resistance, or die and be recycled by the machines to become nutrients for the other imprisoned humans. It is a version of reality where Zion exists, the last bastion of human freedom, and is the one considered by all to be real. The fourth reality is one that lies between the Matrix and the real world, a place that masks itself as a train station where Neo accesses after being in a coma. This is the reality between realities. The greatest secret of the Matrix is that these 4 worlds are nothing more than layers within the same program. All humans are asleep, including Morpheus, Trinity, and the thousands of people in Zion. This reality that we know as planet Earth is just another layer of the Matrix created to manipulate humans and make them believe that they have managed to be free. A false awakening from which they can never escape. How do we know this to be true? Are there any clues? First thing to note is that Neo is able to access the Matrix without the need of any cables or computers, managing to enter the 4th world between the Matrix and the supposed real world. This shows that there is something connecting these 2 worlds that goes far beyond a simple internet connection. Maybe Neo has technology embedded in his head. Maybe that's how he can connect wirelessly. This would be a logical explanation if we didn't already see Neo using his powers in the apparent real world. In the Matrix Revolutions, Neo loses his vision, but he somehow can see the sentries approaching his ship. This is very similar to the first Matrix, when Neo, after he apparently died and revived, could see the Matrix code, thus granting him the means to destroy the agents. So after losing his vision in the 3rd film, he was still able to see the sentries, exhibiting supernatural powers in the real world. It is no longer about Neo having powers within the simulation. Neo had developed powers beyond the first version of reality, which could be used to prove that the 3rd reality, the real world, is equally false. It is just another part of the Matrix, where a Chosen One can modify its code. There are other clues that points to this. For example, when Neo meets the Oracle. There, he meets a boy who gives him a bending spoon, letting him understand that what is reality is not real. This same boy usually interferes with the lives of those who are about to wake up, or those who don't understand what the Matrix is. But the strange thing about all of this is that he sends his spoon to Neo at the city of Zion, the supposed real world, as if trying to remind him that everything is fake. Another point is that Agent Smith is capable of possessing humans who have been awakened. He managed to infect the mind of a Zion citizen, just like in the program. Smith also has powers in the real world. Remember that the architect mentioned that he had destroyed Zion several times before, and then the Matrix restarts. That the machines are responsible not only for the destruction of the city, but also for the creation of each new cycle. This is known as controlled opposition. Smith mentions in the first movie that the machines created a paradise, a perfect version of the Matrix for the humans, yet many rejected the program. The humans need conflict, they need struggle, the need to escape, the need of a savior. According to the architect, Neo is an anomaly in the code, something difficult to erase, but predictable. The machines created all this story of Zion, the real world, and the Chosen One to keep the humans occupied. The Matrix may have more versions. Maybe the real world is different than we thought. This brings us to the fourth Matrix film, and the return of Neo and Trinity. In the Matrix Revolutions, Trinity dies after the Sentinel attack on their ship. Then Neo dies after merging with Agent Smith and becoming one with the Matrix. However, both characters are to return in the next film. Does this mean that both are still alive, captured by the machines? Maybe the machines erased their memories and now are a part of the new cycle of the Matrix. Or maybe we'll see new versions of Neo and Trinity. Not even death is an obstacle for the machines. If this theory is true, Neo and Trinity never really died. Their codes were just reabsorbed and reused. There are theories that proposes that both Neo and Trinity are codes in the Matrix, created to make humans believe that they have found their savior and that they will soon be freed. Neo and Agent Smith, despite being opposites, they are quite similar. Neo is also able to possess others by modifying the Matrix code, besides the fact that he also has powers in the supposed real world. Maybe the truth was always under our noses. Neo was never a human. He is a Matrix program created to continue a facade. Events that made the humans believe that they had found their savior, but was just another program. A false reality within another false reality. When Neo confronts the architect lets him know that he has dealt with his predecessors, the other chosen ones. Within the architect's chamber, there are many TV screens of different Neos talking simultaneously. Surely those that we see on the screens are the previous chosen ones. So Neo is just a mold, an inevitable result. And let's not forget the most important thing. The chosen one is a mathematical result of the Matrix, a foreseeable failure, an error in the code. Neo is not a human, nor is he the savior of the humans. He has always been able to modify the Matrix because he has always been a part of it. Neo is the chosen one, but chosen by the architect. He is the biggest lie, created to keep humans suppressed and unable to wake up. Just another part of the Matrix program. In the beginning of the first movie, there is an error code on Neo's computer. After looking back at these movies, it all makes sense. That's why he was better than the agents, and why he was able to manipulate the Matrix and have powers in the real world. Neo is the biggest lie created by the machines. The Oracle once told Morpheus that he would find the Chosen One. She is the mother of the Matrix. The whole story of the Chosen One was prophesied by the Oracle. That is, by the machines. So then what is the real world? Is it controlled by the machines? Could there be something else hidden behind the Matrix and all of its lies and deceptions? Is the real world of Zion nothing more than another layer of the Matrix? Could Neo be a program created to maintain control over the humans who manages to escape from the first layer of reality? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. And thank you for visiting the Desert of the Real. During the conversation between Neo and the architect in Matrix Reloaded, we learned something significant. There have been many versions of the Matrix. The issue with the Matrix, according to the architect, was found by the intuitive program known as the Oracle.
If I am the father of the Matrix, she would undoubtedly be its mother. The Oracle.
This program added the illusion of choice in the Matrix. Humans would think, at an unconscious level, that they were making decisions. But these decisions were false. False choices that would keep them under control in the Matrix.
As I was saying, she stumbled upon a solution whereby nearly 99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level.
Understanding that this is how the Oracle operates, it is possible that not only was she never on the side of the humans, but that she has been manipulating everything that happened from the beginning. Movie watchers would identify Agent Smith or the Architect as the main villains of the films. However, if we think more objectively, this title may belong to a single entity, the mastermind willing to sacrifice the Matrix itself to achieve her goals, using her method of control, false choices. What was the Oracle's master plan? Welcome to Matrix Explained. We would like to thank you all of you 10,000 Matrix fans. Your support is what motivates us to make more content. Because of this, we would like to introduce you all to our new channel, Mandalorian Universe. There we will be uploading theories, news, and everything related to the world of the Mandalorian. Please go there and subscribe. Link will be in the description below. Thank you again for the 10,000 subscribers. The Architect explained to Neo that although he was an anomaly, it didn't mean that he had escaped the Matrix control. They had taken steps to deal with the anomaly. As the Architect said, the problem has always been choice. In the first film, we can see the influence of the Oracle in everything that happens. Neo made 10 crucial decisions throughout the movie. Every choice is directly caused by the Oracle to make him believe that he was making the decisions, that he was in control of his fate. But really, each of those decisions were inevitably leading him to meet the Architect. You may wonder, what were those decisions? The first was following the White Rabbit. This decision was suggested by Trinity, who in turn was developing an emotional connection with Neo after the Oracle told her that she would fall in love with the One.
Everything the Oracle told me has come true. The Oracle told me that I would fall in love and that the man that I loved would be the one.
Trinity being the person who meets Neo at the club was on purpose. The Oracle sent Trinity because she wanted her to fall in love with Neo. Later, the Oracle insinuates to Neo that Trinity liked him.
I can see why she likes you. Not too bad.
It was not a fluke, nor an accident. It was part of her method of control. The second choice was to choose to be at work on time or find another job.
The time has come to make a choice, Mr. Anderson. Either you choose to be at your desk on time from this day forth, or you choose to find yourself another job.
This ultimatum that the boss imposes on Thomas is very similar to the option that Agent Smith presents to him during the interrogation. It is as if Neo's employer was also a part of the system. The third choice was to follow Morpheus's instructions to escape the building or let himself get caught by the agents.
There are two ways out of this building. One is that scaffold, the other is in their custody. You take a chance either way. I leave it to you.
Morpheus is operating under the assumption that Neo is the one, because the Oracle led him to believe that. When Morpheus tried to help Neo escape, he was doing so under the Oracle's influence. It didn't matter if Neo escaped or got arrested. The result was going to be the same. He was eventually going to wake up from the Matrix. Again, it is a delusion of choice. The fourth choice is when Smith requests Neo to help him catch Morpheus. Before the interrogation even began, we can see that the Architect is watching him. This proves that the Architect knew that Neo was the anomaly before developing any of his powers. The fifth choice is when Neo goes to the Adam Street Bridge. Number 6 is Neo entering the car and agreeing to have his body examined.
Right now, there's only one rule. Our way or the highway.
The seventh, and possibly the most important choice, is the red pill or the blue pill.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
As we mentioned in other videos, the blue pill as well as the red pill are a part of the same system of control. It is an illusion of choice. Even though Neo chose the red pill, he remained under the architect's control. Morpheus eventually takes Neo to meet the Oracle at her home. There he meets the Spoon Boy, who tells him that the spoon does not exist. This influences another choice that Neo would make in the future, accepting that he is the one that can manipulate the Matrix. Accepting that the spoon was not real is choice number 8. Neo finally meets the Oracle. She knew who he was before even looking at him. She would offer him a seat, but she knew he wouldn't take it, to not worry about the vase before Neo broke it. It is as if the Oracle knows everything that's going to happen before they happened.
How did you know?
Oh, what's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
From Neo's perspective, fate or destiny does not exist. He is in control of his future. But the Oracle scoffs at that perception. Everything she tells him indicates that she knows all that will happen in the future. That's because everything is predetermined. She tells Neo that he will have to make a choice.
You're going to have to make a choice. In the one hand, you'll have Morpheus's life. And in the other hand, you'll have your own.
This is incompatible. You can't see the future, determine everything that will happen, and simultaneously offer people a choice. The Oracle offers Neo the choice because he doesn't have one. When she tells him that he must choose between Morpheus's life or his own, she is telling him what will happen to instigate Neo to act.
I don't know. This can't be just coincidence. It can't be. What are you talking about? The Oracle. She told me this would happen. She told me that I would have to make a choice.
If the Oracle had not informed Neo about Morpheus, he may have chosen not to save him. He may have not traded his life for Morpheus's. The illusion of choice. Before Neo leaves, the Oracle assures to him that he is in control of his life. Yet that is not true. Her saying this seems more like a mockery than advice.
Don't worry about it. As soon as you step outside that door, you'll start feeling better. You'll remember you don't believe in any of this fate crap. You're in control of your own life. Remember?
Choice number 9 is of course Neo saving Morpheus. After visiting the Oracle, the crew is betrayed by Cypher and ambushed by the agents. Most of the crew is killed off. Tank gets revenge on Cypher, but Morpheus is captured by the agents. Neo remembers the Oracle's words. Even though Neo doesn't believe to be the one, he risks his life to save Morpheus. After Morpheus is rescued by Neo and Trinity, the trio goes to the nearest exit, but Agent Smith finds them. Neo is left alone to fight the agent, or run. He chooses to confront Smith, but he hasn't accepted who he is yet. Agent Smith continuously calls him by his fake name, Mr. Anderson. He responds to the agent that his name is Neo, and manages to defeat him. Kind of. After Neo is chased to the heart of the city, the agents catch up to him and kill him. Just as the Oracle said, one of them was going to die. But thanks to Trinity's confession, Neo comes back to life and finally believes that he is the one. He destroys Agent Smith and escapes the Matrix, completing his final choice. Throughout the entire film, Neo believed that he was making all of the decisions, but in reality, everything was manipulated by the Oracle, him waiting for a sign, one of them dying, and Neo's next life. All of this the Oracle predicted. Now, the fundamental piece of the Oracle's manipulation of Neo has always been the person that he admired the most, Morpheus. Don't take my word for it. Listen to the Oracle herself.
What's funny?
Morpheus. He almost had me convinced.
I know. Poor Morpheus. Without him, we're lost.
But who is this we that she is referring to? After watching The Matrix, we all assumed that she meant humanity. But after her true functions were revealed in Matrix Reloaded, the we didn't mean the humans. It was the machines. Without Morpheus, the machines would have lost control of the integral anomaly. Her plan went without a hitch. The Oracle's purpose was clear, to make Neo believe that he was in control over his life, but that each choice he made still leads him to the path of the One. The movie ends with Neo talking on the phone to the ones in control, warning them that he was going to show the people the truth. And, for the first time, Neo is the one who gives a choice to the enemy. Yet, it does not matter. The Matrix is still in control. The choices that Neo made were all planned.
Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
The fact that Neo ends the film talking about how the choice is up to them, that is, the machines, shows that he still believes in choices, and that the Oracle's control over Neo was completed. The Oracle is undoubtedly one of the most cunning and interesting characters in the saga. But do you agree? Were all of Neo's choices false? Is the Oracle in control over his destiny? For Matrix Explained, please leave a like and subscribe. Agent Smith is the undisputed most popular villain in the entire Matrix universe, a program that managed to break free from the system that had imprisoned him, to later become a mutual threat for humans and machines. The thing about Agent Smith is that if we delved a little deeper and see beyond the obvious, this agent could be the most profound character with the deepest philosophical motivations in the entire film history. A villain that we feared, not because of his immense power, but for the expressions he made when he confronted our own reality. Welcome to Matrix Explained.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Before we begin today's video, we would like to announce our giveaway for the Matrix Movies Complete Collection on Blu-ray, which includes The Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, and The Animatrix. All you have to do to participate is subscribe to this channel, leave a like on this video, and tell us in the comment section below which pill would you choose, the red or the blue, and why. The winner will be announced on September 15th. Good luck, and enjoy today's video. Neo was driven and motivated by love, his love for a single person, Trinity, and his compassion for his fellow humans, inside and out of the Matrix. Smith, on the other hand, was his antithesis, driven by hate and contempt towards the human race. He is a misanthropic villain, although he differs from other villains. He hates humanity simply because hate is all that he knows. His hate came as a result of a complex logical observation that led him to a dire conclusion, one that unfortunately does not favor humans. In order to understand this character, we need to study his words. The first time we caught a glimpse of Agent Smith's thought process was in Mr. Anderson's interrogation scene. At first he seems calm and collective, a typical representative of the law, but as the scene progresses, he develops a stoic, robotic, and even sarcastic demeanor.
Tell me, Mr. Anderson, what good is a phone call if you're unable to speak?
This early part of the film reveals that Agent Smith relishes in torturing humans. Smith may seem like the classic evil guy stereotype, but his reason for hating humans is not irrational nor impulsive. Smith's interrogation of Morpheus is where we can see the basis of his reasoning.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals.
As I said, he tried to classify humans. As we know, Smith was created as an agent program, and their role is to maintain the facade within the Matrix and remove anyone that becomes too dangerous to the simulation, thus preserving the status quo. The fact that Agent Smith was trying to categorize humans is a trait that went a bit further beyond his basic programming. This is because his function is to maintain order in the system, not to question human actions and or motivations. Still, he insisted on asking himself what exactly is a human being, so he began his categorization process.
Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply, and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. The only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. You know what it is? A virus.
We humans are considered the apex predator of this planet, but we differ from other mammals in the sense that we actually destroy our environment, bypassing any semblance of balance. We are an all or nothing species. This fact is irrational to Agent Smith, and not only that, it is also incompatible with how other animals live in the planet. And this brings him to the conclusion that we humans are a disease. The philosopher Hobbes stated that humans were evil by nature and needed authoritarian laws in order to keep them in check and be functional in society. He basically says that we need something to control our aggressive impulses that emanate from our selfish motivations. This is an idea that has been talked about countless times in philosophical discourses. For Agent Smith, however, this was more than a philosophical ideal. For him, this was the truth. He saw humans as destructive, more so when they rejected peace, made war with the machines, and jilted the Paradise Matrix. From the agent's point of view, humans are the worst thing that has happened to planet Earth. And this is true for the Matrix universe, because most issues and conflicts can be traced back to human selfishness and fears.
Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague. We are the cure.
Fascinating, isn't it? But it doesn't end there. Another curious point about Agent Smith's reasoning is that the destructive behavior that Smith classifies as human is not really reflected on the humans in the movie, but on himself and the other agents, which makes his dialogue a bit ironic. He talks about humanity being a virus, a plague that destroys everything in its path, yet his initial thoughts about humanity foreshadow his own future. The question is, how can Smith hate humanity to then adopt their worst qualities? According to him, he was corrupted by humanity long before Neo entered his code.
I hate this place, this zoo, this prison, this reality, whatever you would call it. I can't stand it any longer. It's the smell. If there is such a thing. I feel saturated by it. I can taste your stink. And every time I do, I fear that I've somehow been infected by it. It's repulsive.
Imagine a world without rules. Nothing is illegal, nothing is immoral, everyone is absolutely free. This might sound like a utopia to you, but according to 17th century British philosopher Thomas Hobbes, it would actually be your worst nightmare. Hobbes called this hypothetical time, with no rules to govern our behavior, the state of nature, and he described life there as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And he was probably right. The land of do as you please sounds great until you realize that everyone else is also doing as they please. That's when you find out that you have an abundance of freedom, but you do not have any security. Because when everyone's constantly watching their backs, whoever is the biggest bully will be able to dominate, simply by fear and aggression. And even if you happen to be the biggest bully, life's not going to be any better, because when enough weaker bullies get together, even the strongest can be overthrown. So this type of system, a sort of anti-system without rules and without order, is a terrible way to live. And Hobbes pointed out that rational people would want to change the system. They'd trade in some of their natural freedoms in exchange for the security offered by civil society. The key to saving the world from chaos, he said, was a contract. Hobbes didn't think there was anything deeply real about morality. It's not written in the stars or waiting to be discovered by reason or handed to us on stone tablets by the divine. Morality, he believed, is not primitive or natural. Instead, Hobbes proposed, anytime you get a group of free, self-interested, rational individuals living together, morality will just emerge. Because free, rational, self-interested people realize that there are more benefits to be found in cooperating than in not cooperating. Like, say I have an avocado tree growing outside of my house. I consider it mine, and I can take all the avocados I want from it. You have a mango tree, and you can take all the mangoes you want. But sometimes avocado havers grow tired of avocados, and mango havers grow tired of mangoes. This might actually be a bad example, because is there any such thing as too much guacamole? But sometimes you just really want a mango smoothie, and in the state of nature, where there are no rules, the only way for me to get a mango is to steal it. And the same goes for you and my avocados. So we found ourselves living in a world where we steal from each other, which means that both of us are always on edge, and we see each other as enemies. But remember, we're rational, so we find a better way. We make an agreement. We promise not to steal from each other, and we promise to trade avocados for mangoes. Now we have more security and a more interesting diet. What we have created is a contract, a shared agreement, and suddenly morality is born. This view, espoused by Hobbes and followed by many today, is known as contractarianism. Contractarians say that right acts are those that do not violate the free, rational agreements that we've made. And we make these agreements because we think they'll make our lives better. So basically, we trade in some freedom for the benefits that come out of cooperative living. Avocado for mango contracts are pretty straightforward. We both want something, and we make an explicit contract that we both believe will result in us being better off. But some contracts aren't so obvious. We're also bound up in a lot of implicit contracts, ones that we've never actually agreed to but sort of find ourselves in. For instance, natural-born citizens of the United States never agreed to follow the law of the land. Immigrants who become citizens do. They have to engage in an explicit contract as part of the citizenship process. But for the rest of us, we are expected to follow all sorts of rules that we never agreed to follow. Now, if you try to explain to the cop who pulled you over that you never agreed to the speed limit, so you're not bound to follow it, I'm pretty sure you're going to get a ticket anyway. And that might seem really unfair to you, but contractarians will tell you that it's not. Because you reap all kinds of benefits from being a part of this system. You get to drive on safe roads, drink clean water, and if your house catches on fire, people will show up and do their best to put it out. Rights imply obligations by Hobbes' thinking, so when you take from the common pot by enjoying the goods that the system provides, you are also expected to pay in. That's what happens when you pay taxes, and when you show up for jury duty, and when you accept the punishment for violating the rules, even rules that you disagree with. So contracts are a pretty brilliant way for making society not just survivable, but possible. They save you from the situation that Hobbes described as war of all against all, and puts you in this idyllic land where everyone cooperates. But can you really count on cooperation? To explore that question, let's head over to the thought bubble for some flash philosophy. In the 1950s, Canadian mathematician Albert W. Tucker formalized an idea that had originally been posed by American game theorists Merrill Flood and Melvin Drescher. Since then, many versions of this dilemma have been presented, but Tucker's scenario goes like this. You and your partner in crime are both arrested and put in separate rooms for interrogation. The prosecution doesn't have enough evidence to convict you for your main offense. The best they can hope for is to give you each a year in prison on a lesser charge. So the prosecution offers you each a deal. If you rat out your partner, they'll let you go free. But now you and your partner face a dilemma. If you both remain silent, you know you won't get any more than a year in prison. But if you're enticed by the thought of doing no time at all you have to do is squeal and you'll go free while your partner does 3 years. The problem is, enticed as you are by the offer, you know that your partner is thinking the same thing. And if you each give up the other, then the prosecution will have enough evidence to send you both away for 2 years. So now you think, no, it's better to stay silent. That way you'll only get the 1 year, as long as you can count on your partner to reason the same way. But what if he doesn't? What if you stay quiet and your partner's the rat? Well, that means you're doing 3 long years while he gets away scot-free. Facing that unpleasant prospect, if you're both rational agents, you'll be drawn to the conclusion that looking out for yourself is the best option, because it carries with it the prospect of either 0 or 2 years, rather than the 1 or 3 years that you might get if you stay silent. Thanks, Thought Bubble. The prisoner's dilemma shows us some interesting wrinkles in contractarianism. Even though it was rational for both prisoners to squeal, they'd actually have been better off if they could count on each other to stay quiet. Cooperation pays, but only when you trust your fellow contractors to keep their agreements. This is why a lot of defection occurs among strangers. Defection is where you break the contract you're in, whether you agree to be in it or not, and you decide to look after your own interests instead of cooperating. For example, the next time you're driving during rush hour, you will see rampant defection. Instead of following the rules, waiting their turn, and merging when they're supposed to, people will speed down the shoulders and try to sneak up to the head of the merge lane, which ends up slowing down everybody. But you see much less defection among people who know each other, because when you flagrantly violate a contract among people you know, it comes with a heavy social cost. There's a special kind of moral outrage for somebody who freely makes an agreement they didn't have to make and then violates it, because our whole society is built on the trust that people will keep their word. But there's another important part of this theory, one that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is, in order for a contract to be valid, the contractors must be free. You can't force someone into a contract, and the contractors must be better off in the system that the contract makes possible than they would be outside of it. Sure, there are probably some rules that don't work in your favor all the time, but the system overall must make your life better than if you were on your own. So contractarianism necessarily rules out things like slavery. Any given person will always be better off outside a system that enslaves her, so that type of system could never be legitimate, even if it's agreed upon by the majority of the group. And maybe you've noticed something else about this moral theory, something that's distinct from, say, the divine command theory, or Kantianism, or even utilitarianism. With contractarianism, there is no morality until we make it up. There's nothing fundamentally real about it, but it becomes real as soon as you and I agree that it is, because once we agree to particular rules, they become real and binding. So in a way, contractarianism is the most permissive of the moral theories we've looked at. Morality is determined by groups of contractors, so whatever they agree to goes. Which means, of course, morality can change. If, as a group, we change our minds, we can simply modify the contract, which is exactly what happens, explicitly when we change laws, and implicitly with shifting social mores. But contractarianism is still pretty rigid in some ways. If you take on an obligation, you have a duty to keep it. This theory starts with the assumption that we get to choose what responsibilities we incur, so we're all held to a high standard for keeping the agreements we choose to make. Next time, we're going to conclude our unit on moral theory with a look at virtue theory. Today, though, we learned about contractarianism. We talked about Hobbes's state of nature and the implicit and explicit contracts. We learned about the prisoner's dilemma and the benefits and costs of violating contracts. Crash Course Philosophy is produced in association with PBS Digital Studios. You can head over to their channel to check out a playlist of the latest episodes from shows like It's Okay to Be Smart, Physics Girl, and Shanks FX. This episode of Crash Course Philosophy was filmed in the Dr. Cheryl C. Kinney Crash Course studio with the help of all of these awesome people and our equally fantastic graphics team is Thought Cafe.
Crash Course Philosophy is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace, share your passion with the world.
Why is the sky blue? Which came first, orange the color or orange the fruit? And why is C-3PO afraid of everything? Like, who decided it was a good idea to teach a droid to experience fear? There are some questions that we ask ourselves, either as kids or adults, or both. They're questions about weird everyday things, and they're weird because most of us don't know the answers to them offhand. But most of the time, those questions turn out to be pretty answerable. Like, for the ones I just mentioned, the short answers are, because of the way photons interact with molecules in the atmosphere, the fruit, and because that's what George Lucas wanted. Maybe because 3PO is a protocol droid and they need to be able to relate to humans, though he could stand to turn his fear settings down a notch. Now, as you know, philosophers have a soft spot for questions that can never be answered. Most of the time, these puzzles make for great thought experiments, tests of our skills in logic and argument. But there are some questions whose very lack of an answer can be downright troubling. Unlike the occasional fluke of physics or bit of Star Wars trivia, there's a part of us that really wants or even needs to have an answer to these things. For the past month or so, we've been exploring the philosophy of religion, and we've been doing it mainly from a theistic perspective, looking into arguments that justify belief in God. But one of the most persistent challenges to God's existence is also the root of one of the most asked but least answerable questions that we as thinking beings face. Why is there evil? Evil comes in many forms, and likewise for philosophers, poses many problems, especially vis-a-vis the existence of God. First, there's what's known as the logical problem of evil. Like all rational people, theists can't help but acknowledge that the world is full of evil. And here we're understanding evil to be all manner of bad stuff, like not just Hitler or Darth Vader or Moriarty. It's everything in the vast spectrum of badness, from stubbed toes to plagues and everything in between. Theists and atheists both agree that evil exists in this way, but they disagree about the next part. Many theists believe in an omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent God, but atheists argue that this creates a contradiction, a set of beliefs that can't all be true at the same time. Because evil is bad, right? Whether it's stubbed toes or genocide or paper cuts or epidemics. So if there's really an all-knowing God out there, he knows about all the evil. He might even know about it before it happens. And if he's all-powerful, he could stop it. And if he's all good, then he would want to stop it. And yet he doesn't. The evil continues. Philosophically rational people shouldn't hold inconsistent beliefs, so atheists argue that you're going to have to give something up, and the thing to give up is God. Some theists, however, take a different route. They choose to give up one or more divine attributes. They argue that maybe God isn't powerful enough to stop evil, or maybe he's not knowledgeable enough to know about it, or maybe he's not even good enough to care about stopping it. That might sound weird to some of you, but if you've ever heard someone say that God is envious or petty or jealous, that's basically what they're doing. They're acknowledging the possibility that God is not actually good. If you've ever checked out the Old Testament, there's a God there who has some anger issues, one who's not at all opposed to wiping out entire populations just because of some bad behavior. Still, despite this scriptural evidence, many theists are committed to God's omni-attributes and are thus stuck with a problem. They have to resolve the logical problem of evil, find some way to explain why God would allow evil into the world. And if you can do that, then you are presenting what is known as a theodicy. A theodicy is an attempt to show that the existence of evil doesn't rule out the possibility of God's existence. Yes, this is such a big deal that there's a word for it, and the most popular theodicy is called the free will defense. This argument holds that God maximized the goodness in the world by creating free beings, and being free means that we have the choice to do evil things, a choice that some of us exercise. This theodicy says that God doesn't create evil, but evil can't be avoided without depriving us of our freedom, and a world without freedom would be a worse place overall. This explanation preserves God's goodness because he created the best possible world, and also preserves his omnipotence and omniscience because although he does know about evil and could stop it, he has a good reason not to ensure our freedom. The problem is, the free will defense only really addresses what's known as moral evil, or the evil committed on purpose by humans. Now, we're certainly responsible for a lot of bad stuff, but you can't blame us for everything. We can't be held responsible for the fact that the plates of the earth sometimes shift, causing destructive earthquakes, or that a storm might knock a tree over that falls onto someone's house. This type of evil, the stuff that we're not responsible for, is called natural evil, and the free will defense can't resolve natural evil. Religion is one of those philosophical issues that can make it hard for us to consider anything objectively. That's where fiction comes in handy, because fictional stories can let us see how hypothetical people deal with hypothetical situations. And with that in mind, let's go to the thought bubble for some flash philosophy. Let's consider the case of Ivan, a good Russian who wants to break up with God. In the novel The Brothers Karamazov, 19th century Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky presents us with Ivan, a man who claims to believe in God. But Ivan finds the fact that God allows evil to exist to be so unforgivable that he decides that worshipping such a God would be just unconscionable. Ivan goes so far as to declare that he is returning his ticket to heaven. If the same God who allows evil, particularly the suffering and death of children, is also saving a cozy place in paradise for Ivan, well, Ivan wants nothing to do with it. So his way out of the problem of evil is to deny God's goodness and to conclude that a bad God is not only unworthy of his worship, he's also not someone Ivan wants to spend eternity with. It's like the ultimate unfriending. Now, some readers have found Ivan's decision to be noble and full of integrity. After all, if you really think God is letting all of this bad stuff happen, why would you want to be on his team? But other people think Ivan is being irrational. Why condemn yourself to an eternity in hell on principle? For theists, it's another question that doesn't have an easy answer. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Now, unlike Ivan, a lot of people aren't willing to give up their ticket to heaven, so they need to work on a way to keep believing in and worshiping God, even though evil is still a thing. One way to do that is to argue that good can't exist without its opposite. The idea here is that you can't understand the concept of pleasure without pain, We don't know what it feels like to be warm if we haven't been cold. We can't understand the goodness of filling our bellies if we've never been hungry. But there's also another way, though it involves a little more work on your part. 20th century English philosopher of religion John Hick offered what's known as the soul-making theodicy. Unlike the traditional view that God created a perfect world, which we ruined through our own poor choices, Hick argued that God deliberately creates us unfinished, and our earthly lives are designed to toughen us up in a sense, kind of like boot camp. The harshness of life, Hick said, gives us a robust texture and character that wouldn't be possible without an imperfect world. Hick said that we're not just God's little pets, and he's not our benevolent owner whose sole job is to keep us in a safe, comfortable environment. Instead, he wants to build us, to train us into a particular kind of being. So we need an environment that's suited to the sort of growth that he wants, the sort that this world makes possible. A lot of people find these and other theodicies to be pretty compelling. However, the problem of evil actually goes a step deeper. What we've been talking about so far is the logical problem of evil. This problem can be resolved if we can explain why there's evil. But there's also the evidential problem of evil. This problem points out that we might be able to explain why evil exists, but we still can't explain why there's so much evil in the world. For instance, let's say that it's true that we really do need evil in order to understand goodness. In that case, why can't we understand the contrast through some sort of low-level evil, like paper cuts and head colds and having to work straight through our lunch hour every now and then? I mean, slow, painful deaths from cancer and city-destroying hurricanes, they don't really add anything valuable to our understanding of goodness, do they? If God were truly good, and if a negative contrast were really needed in order for us to understand the goodness of the world, then why wouldn't he just give us the very minimum dosage of necessary evil to achieve that goal? A counter-argument might suggest that there's always a good that corresponds to and is proportionate to any evil, but empirically, such goodness is really hard to find. What good, for example, could possibly correspond to the horrors of a genocide? In cases like this, Hick's soul-making doesn't seem to cut it. You can't really argue that whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger, because sometimes evil does kill us, a lot of us, and sometimes it kills us before we have a chance to grow and learn from the suffering we've endured. Despite these and other philosophical sticking points, a lot of people have found a theodicy that satisfies them, one that they believe reconciles the apparent evil in the world with God's existence. Others find all of these theodicies to be flawed, and they reject God's omni-nature, preserving their belief in God by finding him to be less than perfectly powerful or knowledgeable or good. Still others are convinced that the evil in the world is simply incompatible with the existence of a God, or at least any God worth worshipping. Wherever you end up, this is a problem that needs to be grappled with, and you'll probably be thinking about it long after this lesson has ended. After all, today we have considered the biggest problem in theism, the problem of evil. We've thought about different theodicies, or ways that we might reconcile the existence of evil and the existence of God,